Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So I've touched on this topic pretty briefly in both my Chloe Bailey and in my Normani videos, but now that Chloe is gearing up to release her debut album, I thought now was the time to, make the whole video on the topic. So you guys already know where I stand on the whole Next Beyonce, New Beyonce debate, and to me, there's no Next Beyonce, there's no next anybody. And aside from just saying that and being like, that's it, that's the video, y'all can go home now, I do want to talk more about Chloe Bailey and her career, as well as some other artists who have been slapped with the Next Beyonce, New Beyonce sort of label. And while I will be mostly focusing on the whole idea of there being a Next Beyonce, I am speaking on the topic in general, so I will touch on some comparisons that are being made between other artists here and there. Beyonce and her career need no introduction, so I'm not really going to spend much time on that. But moving into the 2000s, Beyonce proved she wasn't just a stand-up member in her girl group, but also a force to be reckoned with as a soloist. By the mid-2000s, Beyonce had already earned comparisons to legendary entertainers like Janet and Michael Jackson, Tina Turner, and Prince. A quick Google search pulled up several 2006 articles comparing Beyonce and Janet. Though Janet had been a pop and R&B icon since the 80s, Beyonce was only on her second solo album at the time. With the release of B-Day, it seemed the media was propping up Beyonce as the next Janet and was saying Beyonce was coming for her crown. It seemed that both ladies had respect for each other and didn't really appreciate the comparisons. Janet said about them, "It's stupid. I don't understand why we both can't do what we do. Why can't we both shine and make great music?" For her part, Beyonce said she was a Janet fan and had nothing but nice things to say about her. She also felt the comparisons to Janet were not only coming too early in her career, but also overlooked her own artistry. Throughout the years, several people and publications have compared Beyonce and Janet. The conversations usually tend to focus not just on their music, but also whether Beyonce is in fact the next Janet Jackson, and now whether she's surpassed her. I also saw a stupid article of reasons why Janet Jackson was the original Beyonce, as if that makes sense. When Beyonce was in Destiny's Child, it was the Diana Ross comparisons, especially in the context of her own group, the Supremes. If anything, this proves this conversation has always been had and always will be had. Beyonce is just this generation's focal point, so now she's one of the entertainers the up-and-coming girls are most compared to. Beyonce was relatively peerless when Aaliyah passed and before Rihanna really came up. And no, I'm not ignoring the Ashantis, the Mayas, and the Sierras or saying that they weren't big or weren't talented. But female artists in that lane rarely, if ever, rose to Beyonce's level of stardom and maintained it for years the way that Rihanna did. There weren't conversations that like Sierra or Ashanti or Cassie or anyone like that was coming for Beyonce's spot the way that people said it about Rihanna. Rihanna burst into the scene back in 2005 after being signed to Rockefeller by Jay-Z. Soon after, she performed at a Rockefeller showcase along with A. Marie and Tierra Marie. Apparently after the showcase, Beyonce told L.A. Reid that Rihanna was the one among the girls with the biggest it factor. There's speculation that Beyonce did this because Rihanna was the only one of the three that she didn't see as a threat. After Rihanna really started taking off around 2007-2008, the Beyonce and Rihanna comparisons were in full effect. They didn't really have a similar image, nor is their music all that similar, and it seemed that the fact that they were both young black women with stage presence meant that they were close enough to be compared. The two also spent a lot of time in close proximity, of course with Rihanna being one of Jay-Z's artists and Beyonce and Jay-Z being together. For years, fans and the media stirred up drama and a rivalry between Beyonce and Rihanna. The usual narrative was that Beyonce is jealous of Rihanna and never wanted her to achieve her level of fame. Other fans, and I use that word loosely, started propping Rihanna up as the one entertainer who, for lack of a better word, could replace Beyonce. Kanye West himself said Rihanna's success made Beyonce up her game. He said that upcoming rappers pressured him in the same way, which is why he put out Love Lockdown. He said, "This is a wake-up call. People in music get comfortable, rappers get comfortable. Rihanna was the best thing to happen to Beyonce." According to him, without Rihanna applying pressure on Beyonce, she never would have put out Single Ladies. It doesn't sound like he meant it as an insult because we all know Kanye loves single ladies.
But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time. One of the best videos of all time.
But it does show how even artists thought Rihanna was potentially coming for Beyonce. Though Rihanna has become an iconic musician in her own right, she was never going to be the next Beyonce. I think it was always pretty clear that she was in her own lane, though rumors of a rivalry have followed them for almost 2 decades now. And if any sort of tension ever existed over this, they've both been private about it and seem to be on just fine terms now. Rihanna is one of the few entertainers considered to actually be one of Beyonce's peers. The current artists who are called the next Beyonce usually aren't viewed as rivals or replacements, but rather as the artists who will sort of carry Beyonce's torch. This is most likely because these artists are from a different generation than Beyonce, as well as the fact that in cases like Chloe Bailey's, she's a mentor. Typically, the qualities of a next Beyonce or new Beyonce contender are a young black woman who can both sing and dance. She also has to have stage presence and the ability to put on a show. Usually her music will be either pop and R&B or a mixture of both. Most of these artists have already seen a degree of success, and some have even been co-signed by Beyonce and some of the same artists who have co-signed her. Chloe Bailey has been under Beyonce's wing for a while now. Initially, she gained Beyonce's attention as part of Chloe and Halle, the music duo formed with her younger sister. The pair caught Beyonce's eye after they covered her song Pretty Hurts, which went viral on YouTube. They'd actually met before that since Chloe played a younger version of Beyonce's character in The Fighting Temptations. Beyonce signed Chloe and Halle to her label, Parkwood Entertainment, in 2015. Over the years, Beyonce's expressed love and support for the sisters and mentored them and even included them in her film for Lemonade. The Beyonce comparisons didn't really pick up steam until a couple years ago. When Chloe and Halle did their performances for Ungodly Hour, people started to compare Chloe's stage presence to Beyonce's. And Chloe does have a much bolder, more explosive stage presence that is reminiscent of Beyonce in some aspects. Aside from that, Chloe is also a great dancer and an even more gifted vocalist. The comparisons only increased when Chloe released Have Mercy, her first single as a solo artist. After she performed Have Mercy at the VMAs, Chloe said that people started calling her Baby Beyonce. I won't act like she doesn't look and sound like an artist who's mentored by Beyonce. I also think the fact that Have Mercy sounds vastly different from anything Chloe released with her sister made people even more likely to make the Beyonce comparisons. Chloe said that after her first Have Mercy performance, she received positive feedback and support from Beyonce. Chloe said in a Breakfast Club interview that Beyonce doesn't really feed into the comparisons and it's not something that they really talk about. She said, "That's the biggest compliment anyone could possibly give me. I have so much more work to do to even get there, to even get an ounce of what she is." And I'm glad she said that, because girls will be 5 minutes into their career and people are already calling them the next somebody when they haven't even figured out what their own musical identity is. Since Chloe is under Beyonce's label and is mentored by her, I think it's logical that there are some similarities musically and performing-wise. As far as Chloe's performance style, she's always given it her full effort, but it seems kind of chicken or egg. And by that, I mean it's hard to tell if this was always going to be her performance style or whether Beyonce's mentorship influenced it. She was under Beyonce's tutelage long before we saw this side of Chloe, but the music she was making beforehand didn't really necessitate it. According to Chloe, Beyonce helped her pick Surprise as her third single. I'll never forgive Beyonce for that, but I think it was a smart choice if you look at it from the angle of showing a different side of Chloe. Not Chloe in general, I guess, because we've seen that with Chloe and Halle, but at least a different side of Chloe as a soloist. And I think Chloe will continue to branch out musically when In Pieces comes out. It seems like she's making a conscious effort to take her music in a different direction than Have Mercy and Treat Me, which I think will help stop the comparisons. I would argue that Chloe almost can't sound too similar to Beyonce, or people will be turned off or write her off as a Beyonce copy. People have been angling for Chloe to discover her unique sound for over a year now, so if it sounds too much like Beyonce's, they'll probably check out. I'm eager to see the direction she goes in with her debut album, and I'm sure as her solo discography expands, people will start to see Chloe apart from Beyonce. Hopefully it will be something like how people were calling Ariana Grande the next Mariah Carey, but it died down the more Ariana established herself. The other artist who most consider to have next Beyonce potential is Normani. This is to the point where it feels like some sort of fake rivalry has been created between Chloe and Normani over who will be crowned the next Beyonce. I feel the same way about Normani being compared to Beyonce as I do Chloe. People just saw that Normani was a great dancer and was putting out some R&B songs and ran with it. And like I said with Chloe, the comparisons can't really be made when Beyonce has been in the game for decades and Normani has a handful of songs. And that's no shade either, because I said the same thing about Chloe. Even while she was still in Fifth Harmony, Normani was compared to Beyonce, and it was said that she had Beyonce potential. It made fans even more eager to see her go solo because they'd already made up their minds she'd have a similar career trajectory to Beyonce. Normani's first solo song, Motivation, only seemed like confirmation of this. Normani gave us a fun summertime R&B jam, complete with powerhouse choreo, and a Crazy in Love tribute at the beginning of the video. Normani wasn't comparing herself to Beyonce, but rather paying homage to her, but the parallels were there. Both songs were the artist's first solos and meant to be the lead single from their solo debut album. Both Motivation and Crazy in Love were each artist's announcement that they planned to make an impact in music outside of their girl group. After performing Motivation at the VMAs, Forbes wrote an entire article comparing Normani to Beyoncé. They said her performance was reminiscent of Beyoncé at the same age, and she was the most likely artist to become a global icon of Beyoncé's status. Aside from the girl group comparisons, Normani was also propped up as the next big female artist to come out of Houston since Beyoncé. Though Normani was born in Atlanta and spent part of her childhood in New Orleans, she moved to Houston after Katrina. I'm not sure how many female entertainers have come out of Houston since Beyoncé, but I know Normani's not the only one since Meg is also from Houston. So I don't know if they meant the next R&B artist out of Houston, but I don't even know if Normani is actually the next one after Beyoncé. Normani said about the Beyoncé comparisons, "It's really beautiful to know that people see that potential in me, but I think I'm mainly excited for the opportunity to be Normani." So similar to Chloe, she sees it as a compliment that people find her that talented, but still wants to be thought of as her own person, and as they both should. Normani's solo career quickly earned co-signs from artists including Beyoncé, Rihanna, and Janet Jackson. When the Motivation video debuted, Kehlani tweeted, "We ain't had our own superstar triple threat girl to stand over as a generation. We grew up on them, but she's ours, and she's black. Mwahaha, yes." This tweet implied that we hadn't seen the likes of an artist like Normani since Beyoncé. I've also seen people call Normani the next Janet Jackson or the next Aaliyah. Normani said she's inspired by Aaliyah and Janet is of course someone Beyoncé gets compared to. Normani paid tribute to Janet in her Wild Side performance at the VMAs. Wild Side itself plays tribute to Aaliyah's song 1 in a Million. I think the Aaliyah comparisons come from Normani's more laid-back, softer songs like Dancing with a Stranger or Love Lies. But personally, I can see them as inspired by Aaliyah at most, but calling her the next Aaliyah wouldn't have crossed my mind. Same with Janet Jackson, honestly. While Normani is an R&B artist in her own right, I feel like her direct tributes to these artists have only increased her comparisons to them. I don't think that's a problem with Normani's creative direction, but instead a problem with people who love to compare. People do genuinely want to see Normani succeed, but I do think part of the frustration with her career so far is that people genuinely expected her to be the next Beyoncé. Of course, even people who don't think that still want her to put out more music. But the idea that Normani was going to become a Beyoncé-like figure seems to have people even more disappointed because it heightened their expectations as to where Normani's career should be at this point. I would think that if there was someone to compare Tinashe to, it would be someone more like Janet Jackson. Tinashe gives me more of a Janet vibe than a Beyoncé one. Honestly, I don't really think of either of them at all when I see Tinashe or hear her music, but if I had to pick between the two, I'd pick Janet. After shooting the Two On video, prominent video director Hannah Lux Davis announced Tinashe was the next Beyoncé. MTV claimed that critics said that her debut album, Aquarius, demonstrated her potential to be on Beyoncé's level. Tinashe responded to the Beyoncé comparisons by saying, "It's obviously a lot of pressure because she's an amazing artist, but I think you can only just take it as a compliment. I think she's an incredible woman that I definitely look up to in a lot of ways." DJ Khaled actually brought Tinashe out as a surprise opener during one of the stops on the Formation World Tour. Tinashe said she didn't have time to meet Beyoncé at that time, but they've since met. Throughout her career, Tinashe has been continuously compared to Beyoncé and several other female artists, which she doesn't appreciate. She said that if you're a black female singer, you're treated either like Beyoncé, Rihanna, or Aaliyah. And I agree. Like I've been saying, there are similarities between some of these artists, but not to the point where one can't be talked about without mentioning the other. It also implies that people feel there can only be one black woman artist at the top or making waves, and even if others do exist, they'll always be viewed through her lens. Tinashe said, "There are hundreds of male rappers that all look the same, that sound the same, but if you're a black woman, you're either Beyoncé or Rihanna. It's very, very strange." In the interview where she said this, she was speaking about someone who told her that they couldn't be a fan of hers because they were already a Kehlani fan. All a lot of these artists really need is just some time to find their own sound and own identity. Chloe and Normani are pretty new in the game and haven't established their sound, which usually comes with the more music an artist puts out. In Tinashe's case, most of the Beyoncé comparisons were made around 2014 to 2016 when she herself was still pretty new. Those comparisons aren't really being made anymore. Sure, they've just started comparing Tinashe to different artists, but no one's calling her the next Beyoncé anymore. It's because with time, we got to see her music and performance style is pretty different to Beyoncé's. Tinashe said about her comparisons to other artists, it would be Tinashe the new Aaliyah, Tinashe the next Beyoncé, and I would be like, you guys are setting me up left and right. These people are icons. It started off there and then it was everyone. I literally could name 6 different people at one point that have been Tinashe versus Jene Aiko, Tinashe versus FKA Twigs, Tinashe versus all the R&B girls, literally any black girl, Cassie, all the whisper singers, whatever that means. There's nothing new under the sun. I've spoken on Harry Styles being compared to David Bowie and Elton John, and have seen people call Miley Cyrus the next Stevie Nicks. Nicki Minaj was called the next Lil Kim. When Gaga was coming up, I distinctly remember people discrediting her by saying she was copying Madonna. Other people called her the next Madonna. I can't help but think that there's some generational bias at play, because people always feel as if their generation invented everything the current generation is doing. Often when people make these comparisons, there's some sort of smugness attached, as if being a fan of an artist from a prior generation makes them superior. In reality, a lot of their icons were inspired by artists who came before them too, which is normal. Copying and being similar to or inspired by are completely different things. Even when artists pay homage, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to be the next somebody. Also, these artists are pop artists, or at the very least aren't indie or alternative, so while they aim to be unique to a degree, they're still trying to make music that has mass appeal. A lot of the artists we consider legends and icons follow the same aesthetics and archetypes that existed even before them. And of course, don't get me wrong, we have seen cases where artists were intended to be the next someone, like Britney Spears or Justin Bieber. But typically in those cases, labels are trying to jump on a music trend while it's popular, not recreate the career of an artist from a decade or two ago. It feels like one reason people do these comparisons is to validate the newer artists and give them credibility by comparing them to someone who's already established. And while this is often meant as a compliment, these comparisons don't help in the long run. It can box the artist in or get fans disappointed when an artist deviates from a comparison they've made in their head. In addition, at least as far as the internet goes, it just creates unnecessary stan wars when disgruntled bored stans feel like an artist they already didn't like doesn't deserve a comparison.
It honestly breaks my heart when I see the internet trying to pit me against any other incredible, strong woman. Like, you know, even sometimes when I see it with my sister, they'll try to pit us against each other. And I'm like, come on, that's my best friend. So that breaks my heart. When the Tinashe thing happened, that broke my heart. Even comparisons with me and Normani, she's a badass bitch.
Yeah.
And I'm sick of people doing that.
Now people just gonna hear the B word, be like, she called her a bitch. We're gonna did we edit out badass? Like,
no, but I love her.
I also feel like the this person is the next this person has an element of replacing the older artist. It feels like saying, your generation's insert musician archetype here's time is up, now it's time for our generation's version. One artist coming up doesn't mean another one similar to them is now obsolete. And the silly thing about this is, in a lot of these cases, the artists people claim as the next version or replacement of another aren't even that similar. People just pick broad general aspects of their music and put them in the exact same box. And I don't think I've ever seen a case of this that resulted in anything other than fan wars. It also creates a rivalry between artists who possibly wouldn't have had much of a problem with one another otherwise. I sincerely hope this whole Next Beyonce debate ends soon, because it never brings any more support to Chloe or to Normani. It just ends up with them getting attacked because people are offended that they're being compared to Beyonce. All it really does is make Chloe stans mad that Normani's being compared to Beyonce, and then it makes Normani stans mad that Chloe's being compared to Beyonce. Genuinely, I have never ever seen a case of a newer artist being called the next somebody that doesn't just end in the newer artist getting set up to be attacked. So yeah, like who you like. Music and artists will always be in constant conversation with each other and are always influencing one another. And being inspired by or influenced by another artist will always be a thing, and it doesn't always mean that someone is trying to be someone else or trying to be the next version of someone else. And that being said, if you missed the point of this video on purpose and start the stan wars in the comments, you will be handled.
Trust, you will be dealt with. Period.
As always, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can stick around for more. Also, make sure that you follow me on Twitter so that you can keep up with me there. I will see you dolls very, very soon. Again, thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.